Oh. We always do that.
Hello, surprise. I am so thrilled to welcome you to this afternoon's At Ease with
Sia
and Lashrecse. And we said we were coming back. Yeah. I am sure you did not know it would be in this form and fashion.
Because we didn't know.
We didn't know. We really didn't. We didn't plan it this way, but here we are. We typically, for those who have been following us and watching us, and I even saw some refer to us as their favorite political podcast, and I thought, oh, I guess we are. You know, I wasn't really sure.
Does everybody know how we started?
No, and most of you all are used to the General Assembly during the legislative session going at ease.
Right.
And you asked us, what are you all doing when everything stops and we just see this screen that says at ease? And we started this to make sure you always knew the work that your legislators were doing at the General Assembly during session, and in particular at the Capitol. But this time we're not at the Capitol.
We are not. We are in Hampton, Virginia in the 757, 2 up, 2 down. Welcome to Hampton Roads. And guess what? We also have a studio audience. For the first time ever. No pressure.
No pressure. But in all seriousness, we had to do this because this moment is unlike any other moment that I think we will see in the nature of how critical this upcoming election is. So we are departing just slightly from our traditional at ease content to bring you a special edition focused specifically on Vice President Harris and Governor Walz.
Yes. So for the next 30 minutes, our one job is to make sure you learn something new and get inspired to take action, because it will take all of us in order to get this win. Because as much energy as we have, we are still the underdog. We are climbing in the polls, but we know polls don't matter. It only matters who turns up on election day and in early voting. So that's what we wanted to talk about today.
So the 3 tasks before us is to make sure you leave knowing exactly who Vice President Harris is, who Governor Walz is, what they're fighting for, their vision for this election and for our community and for our country, and then especially most important, how you can get involved and get in the mix. So, you know, one of the things that, despite all the information that's available, all the commercials, all the social media, that I hear most frequently is, who is Vice President Harris?
Where have they been?
Where
have they been? Sorry, no judgment.
Seriously, they still ask, what has she been doing all this time as Vice President? I haven't seen her. And what makes her qualified for this position right now? And so when I introduce myself, I always start with the fact that I am a working mom who just happens to be a legislator. And the same is true for our Vice President. She didn't just show up on the scene and decide she wants to do this. So let's start with her personal. Not only is she a sister, a daughter, a friend to so many, but she happens to also be the stepmother to the children for Doug's family, and she loves them like her own. But more importantly than that, she went on to obtain her undergraduate degree from Howard University.
I'm sorry, where was that from?
Howard University.
You know?
Thank you. And I hate to say this next part, but it's part of her affiliation. While at Howard University, she pledged the organization of Alpha
Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, which is a C3 organization. So this is not affiliated with that, but we just both happen to be members of that system.
Are you done?
I'm sorry.
She's done.
I'm sorry, what were you saying?
In addition to that, she went on to obtain her law degree from the University of California, Hastings. And she has served in a number of professional and political roles while in California. Not only did she serve as a deputy district attorney, an assistant attorney, but she went on to become the attorney general in California, where she then went on to become the United States senator there. She served as president of the Senate, and then the first woman, Black woman, Asian American woman, every other thing you want to say to affiliate her nationality, if you will, but then to become the Vice President of the United States. And throughout all of those roles, I think it's really critical to note that she has fought on so many issues, and we're going to get into a bit more of that to break down some of the myths. But again, she has all of the qualifications. Yes. She's been doing the work, and she's more than ready for this moment to be our next president of the United States.
And what was the thing that you just found out about her?
Oh my goodness. So this is really weird, but I'm going to say it anyway. If all of those things are not enough, I especially love that she is a Nacho Doritos lover, just like myself.
So if you know anything about Senator Air, I mean, when we were both seatmates when she was a delegate before she became senator, I'm always looking over and it's always Snickers and Doritos. And I have my Mountain Dew. And it's just so funny, you know, the things that we can relate to other people for. But when I read that, I was like, oh, yeah. But for those of you that don't know, Lashrecse aired was K-Hive from the beginning when Vice President Harris was actually running for president. And so I'm going to be very transparent. If you've been following me, you know that I wasn't. And we are still sisters.
I forgive you. I forgive you.
I was a convert, right? So in 2016, I was with Bernie. And in 2020, I was with Elizabeth Warren and a lot of the policies. But I also kind of fell prey to a lot of misinformation, and I'm willing to admit that. But in this next go round, in this new go round, since she became vice president, and especially with this election, I'm like, oh wait, she did what as district attorney? Exactly. She did this. And so a lot of the myths that are out there that are swirling, we may have inadvertently been passing on misinformation, so we don't have time to get into everything here, but I would encourage you to look into the re-entry work that she did in California, and I would just let you know that through TikTok and through Instagram, I verified the information, but I've learned so much more, and I'm willing to admit that I was wrong and to say it's okay to change your mind once you have new information, because when we know better, we do better. And also, I'm not 100% aligned with any candidate, and nor should you be, because we're not a cult.
That's right.
Amen.
Okay?
That's right.
So you don't have to agree with someone 100% on anything, but when you keep checking off that she's so good on the issues, that's your person, and that's how you know. And we'll talk about some of those issues. And the other thing I would say is, as candidates, we've been candidates before, fair critique is welcomed.
Correct.
Just so it's on both sides. Vice President Kamala Harris should not be the only one that should be required to put sentences together that make sense, should be required to tell the truth, should be required to know what she can and can't do because of a whole thing called the Constitution. So if y'all gonna ask all these questions on our side, please be sure to let me know when y'all gonna ask those questions on the other side.
And in addition to that, let's be very clear. If you don't vote, you can stop talking.
Yes.
If you don't vote, if you're not going to be involved in the process, if you are not going to inform yourself on the issues, then don't be part of this conversation.
Yeah.
You have no right to engage in any of this if you're not going to do the part and be present and active in all of this.
So we are not here for what about? No, we are here for an actual conversation about facts, because facts matter, and we can have differences of opinion. We can even hold each other accountable on some really big foreign policy issues. But as a queer, disabled, black woman living in America, I know I'm showing up to vote this year, and I'm voting for Harris.
So you're going to hear that for the next 30 minutes.
Yeah, sorry.
Register to vote, get ready to vote, and we're going to make sure you're informed before you go and vote.
Yes, and so,
yes.
Oh my gosh. So a shout out to Kathy Tran, who's a delegate from Fairfax. When we were talking about, who's the VP going to be? Who is the VP going to be? I don't know if you know, but I was a Cooper fan. I was a real big Cooper fan. But thank God Cooper understood that Cooper needs to go back to North Carolina and make sure that LG does not win for governor. So he pulled himself out of the race. I was like, well, who am I going to be with? And she sent me like so many links, but all the links. And the more and more I kept reading about Tim Walz. I'm like, oh my gosh. And so Tim Walz is the vice president that, calling that out into existence, is a man that is chosen to run for vice president with Vice President Harris running for president. And so I've heard some of y'all calling him America's dad.
Which, by the way, troubled me, because I'm like, wait a minute. In Virginia, we have America's dad already.
That's Tim Kaine.
Forever America's dad. That's Tim Kaine. We love you, Tim.
We love you, Tim Walz. But Tim Kaine, you're always America's dad. But there's so much more to Tim Walz's resume. Coach Walz, okay? So Coach Walz was a football coach that took a very struggling team into some championships. And I love hearing about, because I know how much my coaches have meant to me, and just hearing about the role for coaches. He was a teacher. Not only was he a teacher, he was a teacher that signed up to be the, the chaperone, for lack of a better word, for our LGBTQ plus group. And I don't know if they had all the letters then, but for like a gay straight alliance group at the time. And it was just like, that in Minnesota, I don't know if that was quite, the popular thing, but it was the right thing. And he stood there and he knew that those kids had a safe place for him. And also, can we please get this straight? He served honorably for his nation, because what we're not going to do,
no confusion about
we're not going to have the draft dodger casting dispersions on anybody's honorable service when you didn't put on nobody's uniform to do nothing. But anyway, he served honorably, and then he's also a duck hunter. But he also supports common sense gun reform because he knows that we can save lives with gun violence prevention. And so all of this, and then he became a congressman. He has a track record of being a wonderful bipartisan leader. So that is not necessarily something that everybody gets, that moniker. And this, I don't know that anybody's ever said that to me. But you have a district where you've had to be very bipartisan and working with the other aisle, helping get things done. So there's benefit to that. And then also, I just think, one of the things as governor, whether you want to call him Tampon Tim or whether you want to call him the guy that helped kids get food, this other side making fun of him for doing things that are actually helping people.
For being a non-weirdo, by the way.
So weird that you would want to have hungry kids. And I'm sorry, I never asked for my period. So the fact that I have to get tampons, that should not be a luxury. And so the fact that people had, the students had access to those items, that made them even better of a choice for me in my book. And so I just want to say one last thing about that, and it's because, we're all getting to know him. But the people that know him, Senator Klobuchar from his own state said on a podcast this week that he is known for being really good with working with strong women. And that is really important because we've met some men who aren't as good.
Are we going to talk about it?
I don't think we have time today.
We're not going to talk about it.
but it is not a given that there are men in positions of power who are willing to listen to or take leadership from women. But he has already a proven track record with that. So how many of y'all here are excited about our candidate? That's in here, that's the energy that we've been seeing at historic levels, historic crowds, actual crowds, not AI generated crowds, actual crowds. But we know energy is not all we need.
That's right.
We need policy
for the next 80 days.
Policy is what delivers for your lives, our lives. So let's get into it.
So I am so glad that we are excited about our candidates because that's step one. You knowing who they are, you understanding how they arrived at these positions, but also so that you understand the lenses in which they arrive at looking at policy measures and how they will establish their visions. And so I'm super excited that just this week, Vice President Harris put out major proposals that begin to lay out how she is going to help fight for working families, to uplift our communities, and put more money back into the pockets of people who need them most. And so let's start talking about the economic policy. So number one, I don't know about you, but just last night, and when I say last night, I mean late last night, I was in the grocery store getting groceries, doing back to school shopping because school starts on Monday, trying to make sure that everything is in order. And when I tell you, I was looking at the price of food, prices are high.
Because remember, we are public service.
Okay. And so if I'm looking at the price of food, I know that people in my community are feeling and thinking the same thing. And so part of her initial policy that she's putting out is to hold entities accountable for price gouging on food. In during the pandemic, we saw the same exact thing. People, companies taking advantage of families during their most vulnerable periods and milking them for every dime and dollar that they have. And so I think it's fantastic that she is going to work to make sure that you actually feel in your pocket more money as you are trying to pay for the cost of food. Also, in addition to that, just keeping on with families. During the pandemic, another thing that we saw that was wildly popular was the child tax credit. This was something that has become known now to contribute toward cutting the rate of childhood poverty in half. So that's coming up in two forms. For if you have a newborn child, in that first year, you will be eligible for $6,000 in a tax credit, which is major. That is real money, that is real cash in a way that you're going to, families will get back in their pocket directly. In addition to that, the earned income tax credit of $3,600, I think that's right, $3,600. Again, we're talking about how do we make sure that people who need it the most are getting money back into their pocket. But that's not just it. When we talk about individuals who have high costs coming out of their monthly, their monthly expenses because of prescription drug costs, she is going to, they are going to work to make sure that they're negotiating, I think it's the top 10 prescriptions that are Medicaid covered at a rate that is affordable to families. And then if you have had major medical expenses that you're seeing thousands of dollars of bills every month, they are going to work like we did with school loans, student loans. They are going to work to wipe out high medical debt that you are sitting on, that you feel burdened by, that you feel is holding you down from financially progressing. So this is real money that is going to go into the pockets of everyday working families, and I'm very excited about that.
Yes.
This is showing up in so many ways, not to mention housing.
Thank you. Because if you don't have the money that you worked hard for in order to pay for things, then that hits not only the groceries, not only the child care expenses, but housing. We are experiencing a housing crisis. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it here in Virginia and across the country. And we have more and more people experiencing homelessness. And the face of homelessness has become older and more frail. And so it's like, we have to take care of people, right? And so having something to eat and having somewhere to live is not radical. That is like human rights sort of stuff. And so recognizing that there are economic obstacles to either renting or to purchasing a home, the compounding effect is that there have been lack of available housing. And so that's what has allowed major corporations to scoop up available houses and then shoot up the prices. And so in continuing her legacy of fighting back against those like mortgage, it was exploitive practices that mortgage lenders were doing in California. She's saying, not only did I do that then, as president, here's what I'll also do. And that is to help offer, to put a cap on certain rents for corporations that are landlords, right? But then to also offer up to $25,000 for families who are looking to purchase their first home. That is major. But we gotta have houses for you to buy, and they're also putting in a proposal in order to build 3 million housing units within their first term. And so, I mean, this is really, when we say relatable stuff, I'm sure when you read the housing stuff, you felt that it was a little bit relatable.
I really did, because I hate to admit this, but in 2 years, my son will be going off to college. It's like, wait, am I old enough to have a son that will soon be in college? But I do. And when I think about, how is he going to afford an apartment? How is he going to, college doesn't take long, 4 years and you're done. How is he going to afford to now financially be in a position to own his own home? So when I think about just trying to get him prepared for that, I want to know that there's a future for him to be able to do these things, because this is what we equate to having quality of life.
Because also as a public servant, do you have more money to take care of your adult children? I don't think we have that extra money.
I remember calling my mother when I was in college saying, hey mom, I could use a little bit more this month for not just the books and the essentials, but you want an experience. And so I'm like, I'm gonna have to do that for my okay.
So we really need to help the college kids before they get out. But really and truly, we were watching a video from a rally where the Republicans were, and I think Trump was on the phone or something, but this was a Republican at a Trump rally, and he was like, thinking he's throwing him a softball, and he's like, so not only just groceries, what are you going to do to help lower the cost of housing? And that former president's answer was, drill, baby, drill. And I'm like, maybe I don't understand the housing market, but making your oil corporation friends richer by ruining our environment does not equate to lower housing prices. And she said, you know what? Hold my water. Here's a policy, and it's that $25,000 for first-time home owners, and then building 3. And that's jobs. That's construction jobs. That's probably incentives for developers. There's lots of nuts and bolts in that. But we know what it's looked like in Virginia, and we are excited for that proposal to be there because some of them 3 million units need to come to Virginia. So while the other side is trying to radicalize the normal of having somewhere to live, having food to eat, they're also trying to normalize the weird of creeping into your bedrooms and trying to control all of your lives. And our answer was to hear from Harrison Walz with, here are actual policies and proposals, not to mention that the EITC and the child care tax credit were just ranked by JLARC, which is the Virginia Legislature's research wing that is nonpartisan, said those two things were what we needed to be doing here in Virginia, and they announced that not even in conjunction with the campaign.
And not to mention, there is no comparable plan from Republicans, from who we're not naming in this moment. We're not naming him, but they don't have a plan. The only plan they do have is Project 2025, and you don't have to read all those hundreds of pages to know it's filled with hate, it's filled with bigotry, it's filled with trying to take us back.
Yes.
Now, the candidate that we have that we can be proud of is not just a smiling, pretty face, because she is beautiful.
There we go.
She has an actual vision, an actual plan, and it's for the people, for working families, for those who need it the most.
Okay, so here's a live poll. Would you rather your hard-earned tax dollars go to make rich corporations richer?
No!
Or to be invested in you, your families, and your community? So what's the other? So that's our bag, right? So that's our money, that's our bag. Now we want to talk about our bodies.
Which, by the way, I hate that we have to have this conversation publicly.
Period.
I never thought that I would have to be discussing reproductive health, reproductive freedom, reproductive rights with strangers, with people who this is supposed to be a very private conversation.
Yes, between me and my doctor.
Yes, exactly. But it's not, because we have a candidate on the other side who is proud and by his own words says he is solely responsible for taking away the freedoms that we have once been able to rely solely on. And I'm not just talking about access to an abortion. I'm talking about maternal health. I'm talking about reproductive freedom all across the spectrum.
Right. Because what a lot of people don't understand when you're so busy reading political talking points and not learning actual science about how women's bodies work, that the procedure that has now been banned in some states is actually needed as life-saving health care. And so we are finding that women are being put in life-endangering situations where the physician doesn't want to be sued and has to wait for the woman to actually get sicker in order for them to be treated. Now, everywhere except for Virginia, because we were able to keep that in our code that right now it is legal and safe to have an abortion and get that health care here in Virginia. But that man wants to make the ban federal, which means Virginians' health, it is at risk.
That's right. And I think the other thing is important to know, people are trying to figure out, why are independents, why are Republicans flocking to Kamala, to Vice President Harris, to Governor Walz? That's because when you start talking about things as personal as IVF, how someone can choose to have their own family and their reproductive decisions, they don't respect that. They do not want government in their bedrooms. And that is why, if you didn't hear anything else that you liked about the two candidates that we are proud to have, or the plans that have been put out, know solely that if you allow the other side to win and be successful in November, we are in deep trouble when it comes to our reproductive rights.
And so it's not even just if and when you want to have a family for the family planning. I know some of y'all have heard me talk about the fact that at 16, I was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome. And so there are women like me, there are people that have endometriosis, fibroids, and all of these things where the birth control pill or the IUD is what helps us leave the house. Without my IUD, I would not be able to be a delegate. I would not be able to do this work. And then I started thinking, oh, that might be the plan. But we're not going to let you take it. And we're going to still be here in positions of power, because our health care is not your political football. But they could not even get the right to contraception passed at the federal level because they could not get the 60 votes that it takes. Every single Democrat that was in there voted for it, right? Yes. But we could not get enough Republicans to vote for it to even shut down the conversation to get to the vote. But we were able to pass the right to contraception act here in Virginia from the House and the Senate side.
Yes.
But then y'all's governor vetoed it.
Y'all governor.
Y'all's governor.
Y'all's governor.
Because what? We couldn't even get him to sign the thing that could help keep contraception available and legal and protected. And so they may not be out here and touting the fact of what they're doing, but let their actions tell you exactly what their plan is. If they would not pass a bill that protects that right, then what's at play behind the
And
scenes?
I think it's always important to say, whenever I think about reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, access to an abortion, contraception, all those things, they're intrinsically linked to everything else. When you decide to begin a family, you need adequate housing. You want to make sure you live in a community where the schools are strong. You want to make sure you are making enough money to afford to care for that family. All of these things are tied together, so it's not just one single issue.
Right.
So if you're someone who's out there that's saying, well, you know, that doesn't have anything to do with me, it does.
It does.
Someone you know, someone in your community, and it ties into all of those other things.
Right. And so that was the bag, the body, and last, our plea for you is to look at beliefs and to really take a stock of what is it that you believe in and what are your values. And one of my favorite things that I feel like our candidates have done is raise this feeling of hopefulness.
Yes.
We have hope. And hope is not something you can purchase.
No.
Hope is not transactional. Hope happens organically. And this type of energy based off hope is because she has a vision for a brighter future. She has a vision where all of us in this room not only have a chance to get by and survive, but also thrive. For our kids to have an outlook on the future that they're happy about. And so that hope.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, and you're a mom, so I know the future is big for you.
I just, as I'm sitting here listening to you talk, it just feels so heavy because one of the things that I always say as a candidate myself is people can read you really quickly. They know when you're real and they know when you're not. They know when you can relate and they know when you can't. I mean, what more can you ask for? Vice President Harris, just this week we were talking about the fact that she worked at a McDonald's.
Right.
She worked as a clerk. She has lived experience of so many just like us. And she's now taking that lived experience and turning it into fighting for everyday people. You know, I recently heard you want to know what a person stands for, what they care about, look at who they fight for. And she is fighting for the least of these. And as it pertains to my own family, it is a heavy feeling. The fear of another XXX presidency, we're not going to say the name, is a very palpable thing because if anything close to what a Project 2025 is able to be implemented, that erases what I stand for, the needs that my own children have into the future, but also those around me in my community that I care a lot about for too.
And I think a lot of what you just touched on was really the empathy. She is the first person at the federal level that I have heard running for president to actually say, you know what, I get it. The metrics are saying that the economy is doing great, but I know that you're not feeling it quite at your own dinner table just yet or in the grocery store. So while I'm great, you know, I'm glad that our policies are helping up here, but we also want to help you here. And that's what her policies really speak to. It's that empathy that I think we feel that it's like, oh, she really does care about what's happening with us, that allows for us to have that hope.
And the last part of that is responsiveness.
Oh,
in just a little bit of time that she has been the candidate for president, you can feel the difference when people are out protesting, when people are at her events and saying they want to hold her accountable, they want more. She's responding to that in real time on the spot. And so while she has her own vision, while she has her own plan, she's not closing off listening to what we are saying we want to see her do and focus on.
Yeah. And so the last one, well, sorry, but the one that's kind of like big, I got really excited, but it's inclusion, right? And so however many people are here in this room, we all have different backgrounds, we all have different lives. I have a family that will not be safe under that man if he was president. And the fact that not only Tim Walz was the LGBTQIA, liaison for that group, but that Vice President Kamala Harris has been out at Pride, has been waving flags, and has been a true ally. I really do not care about your religious beliefs. If you have care for other people, you are allowed to have your religious beliefs. So we should be able to have safety, security, and be able to love within our own families.
That's right.
And that is at risk. I think the other part of inclusion that I love here is looking at this room.
Yes.
No matter who you are, what you've done, what you do, who you love, you have a place on Team Harris Walz.
That's right.
And that is what this is really about. That's what our country is about.
That's right.
That's what the promise of a better future is
That's
about.
right.
And I just don't see the other team really inviting a whole bunch of different people to truly be at the table.
Not at all. Not at all. I think
I wouldn't want to be at that
no,
table.
I don't want to be at that table. We have clearly defined that table as a weird table to be at. So
No tables are weird. Okay, and the last one is trust. I saw somebody on Instagram say, "Who would you trust your kids with?" And I was like, "Ooh,
that's an easy question.
is it the helpers or the harmers?"
Yeah.
And then you talk about the teacher and the prosecutor and the vice president was doing all this for people, and then you look at him and him.
My fault.
No, I'm so good on that.
Quite a distinction.
Yes.
But also the trust in our candidate is not selling off her policy proposals to the highest bidder without regard of what the policies are going to do to the community. She's really taking stock of what we need in our lives, and so that trust factor is big.
And part of that is because the other side is running a race and a campaign based on fear. They don't have anything else.
Yep.
All they have is trying to instill in their side more hate, things that they stand to lose, which, by the way, aren't great things that everyone should have access to, right?
It's not pie. We can all have rights. Love that.
So to be clear, this trust is important because they don't have a real we've seen the fearful plan, but they don't have a real plan of how to lift up everyone that are in our communities.
So, okay, that is the bag, the body, and beliefs, right? So we've given you some real foundational things to think through.
And this is just the beginning.
This
we
is
still
just
have 80 days
Oh my
to go
gosh.
of her rolling out her plans and her vision.
And we have convention coming up, and we're going to hear so much more about it. And whoever gets to go to Chicago, I'll be at the watch party. She'll be in Chicago. But from home, where you are now, or here in this room, we're going to bring Lauren Stewart up with Team Harris. How can we get involved?
Absolutely. And I want to say just thank you all. It's been a total joy to watch y'all do this podcast. And you guys said a key word, hope. Because Project 2025 is very important for us all to make sure that we are informing our communities of what that is about. Once you start digging into it, it does get scary. Yeah. But the cure for fear is hope.
Yes.
And we have power, and the power is in our vote. So I'm sure a lot of you all that have signed on to this podcast today, you already were Team Harris Walz. And hopefully we have some new friends here that have now gotten right information, and you now know how to vote for the best Democratic ticket that we've had in a long time. All right. But we have a lot of work to do. So in this chat, we have a mobilized link that will take you directly to a list of events and ways to get involved. Guys, everyone who's listening here, everyone in this room, we are all organizers, okay?
Yes.
And we must continue to organize. So you sign up for a Canvas launch, you sign up for a phone banking session, sign up to come to an event. When you come, you bring your friends, you bring your family. Do not come alone, okay? So on that link is everything going on in Virginia. Of course, we have Harris Walz, we have Senator Tim Kaine on the ballot. We are in Hampton, so we have to say Congressman Bobby Scott. We have some wonderful congressional candidates all around Virginia. So guys, get involved. We have a lot of work to do, but we can do it, and we can have the victory in November. Because when we fight, we win!
Thank you. And so we are just a few closing words, right? So I know campaigning, politics, I've heard a lot of people say, I'm not political. And I think what they're trying to say is, I don't want to be a part of that, right?
But we don't have the luxury of not being political.
But we also have a really great infrastructure that you don't have to mess with the mess. You can literally talk to your neighbors. You can literally talk to the people in your church. You can literally talk to the people right there. Yes. It's not hard. So whether you've been campaigning since day one, since you were little, we have some true OGs in the room, or whether this is your first time that you'll ever be knocking a door, making a call, or texting your friends, you are welcome here. The amazing team will train you on everything that you need to know. It's really easy. After we've talked about the similarities and differences between what Harris and Walz have to offer, what Tim Kaine, Bobby Scott, Missy Smalzo, and Leslie Method, all of these people have to offer, versus that. then you know, okay, this is where you can come, be yourself, and help us get that
And
win.
like, don't wait.
Please don't.
I mean, when the announcement was made that Vice President Harris would be running for president, for the first time ever, my mother was texting me, how do I get on this Win with Black Women call?
right.
My aunt was texting me, how do I sign up to get involved? They are excited. And now we have to make sure you are the greatest messenger to the people in your network and in your circle. So call your mother, call your aunt, call your brother, your cousins, your own children. They want to hear from you. When you are the messenger, when we're talking about hope and trust, you are the person they trust. So if it's a text message, if it's a phone call, we can help you do all of that. And we can also sign you up to talk to strangers. But there is no better network than the network of your own. And them hearing from you that you trust in Kamala, you trust in Walz, and you're supporting this ticket in November.
Yep, so we heard we're in unprecedented times.
Yes.
But I hear we're in unprecedented times. And it takes unprecedented hope and unprecedented energy for us to get out here and convert all of this into the win in November. So thank you for joining us today.